Welcome to Conscious Insights, Strategies for Leadership Evolution. Engage in roundtable discussions that spark deep dialogue with executives and thought leaders to advance conscious leadership and explore innovative practices. Join us and gain insights that will elevate your leadership journey. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the official season, the first episode of season 2 in Conscious Insights. And I'm really excited for this next season because we're going to shift into like a progression of learning and developing conscious leadership and systemic evolution. And so it couldn't be more perfect that I have Bob Anderson joining today to talk about next paradigm of leadership, evolving consciousness at the executive level. So Bob is the founder and chairman and chief development officer of the Leadership Circle. And Bob created the Leadership Circle, which is a 360 assessment used by organizations around the world to measure the effectiveness of leaders. But I often tell people that I work with, it's so much more than a 360 tool. It's a way of being. And it happens to have a beautiful assessment instrument that goes along with it. But in 2005, the Steyer Center for Executive Education at the University of Notre Dame, Mendoza College of Business awarded Bob the Partner in Innovation Award. And is it the MECO Leadership Institute awarded him the International Thought Leader of Distinction in 2018. And he's the co-author of 2 amazing books, Mastering Leadership, an integrated framework for breakthrough performance and extraordinary business results, and Scaling Leadership, building organizational capacity and capability to create outcomes that matter most. So, Bob, welcome. It is so fun to have you on the podcast. I learned about the Leadership Circle in 2010. And I would say that changed the trajectory of how I have developed as a human and how I've done my work. So it's really an honor to have you here today.
It's my privilege and pleasure to be with you, Renelle.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start just talking about like the roots of what the Leadership Circle is, and how it started and how it seems to be progressing.
Oh boy, that's a big question. Where to start? It's kind of been my whole life. So I've cared about one thing primarily, and that's how do we bring out and really deploy in a practical way and powerful way the exquisiteness of being that's in each one of us. So I've been interested in deep human development my whole life, both spiritually, psychologically, success literature, and I've had the privilege early in getting connected with the real masters in the field in my generation, the Peter Blocks and Peter Senge's of the world. And I mean, really closely working with their organizations. And I learned a ton. And I began to see an integration. It's more like you smell it. And is this the same as this? How does this relate to that? And they have different language, different models, different theories, different research, all different language. But I spent almost 20 years integrating and then applying it with clients and senior teams. And over years, a model developed, a very integrated model of development for leaders that incorporate a lot of the best theory and framework in the field, and both leadership and organization development, but also more broadly success literature, spirituality, psychology, and so on. So it's a very deeply integrated framework. And then somewhere around 2000, I said, I wonder if we can create an assessment that works out of this model. And that became the Leadership Circle profile.
Mm. So what year? That's I didn't even realize it was around then. So it was around 2000 that it became the Leadership Circle profile.
2000. I'll just try to keep this story short. We were on a family vacation down on the beach in Georgia, and I walked out on the beach, and I was completely broke. I just fell down on my knees in the sand and cried.
Mm.
I had put all my eggs in a couple of projects, and I was deep in debt. And I knew in my guts those 2 projects weren't going to work.
Mm.
And so I had 3 kids, mortgage, the whole 9 yards, and I was like, okay, I was starting work on the leadership assessment. This was March of 2000. And I said, I'll have it in the market by January 1st, 2001, which I did. And we were one of the first to put it online, if not the first to really do a full-on 360 assessment online. And on January 2, I got a call, first customer. And the software wasn't complete yet. And I said, yes, we can do that. And the session wasn't until March. So March of 2001, the first assessments rolled off the printer.
Wow. And
Yeah.
now in 2025, it's international.
Yeah.
I can't even, I don't even, do I dare ask the number of people that have taken the Leadership Circle profile at
I've
this point?
lost track of that number. It's a large number. Between self-assessments and 360s, we estimate this year we'll do 100,000 assessments.
Wow.
Probably 60 of those will be self-assessments, which are free online. It's a way of, both contributing, but also promoting.
Yeah.
And then about 40,000 leaders will go through the assessment around the world, the 360 version.
Wow. So I remember in 2010, when I went to the certification, I got a call from someone that I knew, and they were like, come to this certification. It's really interesting. And I was like, okay. Do I need another certification? But I had a call, like, I just felt like, okay, I will. And I remember it being, I don't know if the word is edgy, but it was like a depth, and an edge that I hadn't experienced in the workplace before. Like emotional intelligence, like talking about that was becoming a little bit more accepted, but this depth of consciousness work was a little bit different, and also life changing. So will you talk a little bit about the premise of what we're learning when we engage in the leadership circle?
Well, let me say something before that, then I'll get into I think, as you know, I just turned 70. So,
Happy birthday.
thank you. I'm just starting to, I'm reflecting back a lot and what built the company. And what I track well, the assessment had to be world class. It had to be, good. Otherwise it wouldn't have sold. But what really built the company was the experience in those certifications. And what captured people's imagination was the depth and presence with which we showed up as facilitators in the room and worked with people. And the reason I say that is because you're talking about, we're moving toward what's the next generation of leadership. Well, we underestimate the power of our presence and a kind of deep resonance that speaks to people at a level that they don't even have consciously. So people walked out of that going, what just happened to me? That was amazing. And there was a frequency that we were hitting that had been developing in me with all this deep work over years. But then in the 90s, I went into the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, which was a really deep process work of energy, learning about energy and frequency and healing and presence and undefended presence and so on. And when we showed up in the room like that and did the deep work that the Leadership Circle evokes, it just went like a wildfire. My marketing guy said, what's going on? I'm not making any more outbound calls. They're it's incoming. So the word of mouth just went.
Yeah.
And
That's a great
so
point. That's how I got involved, is where it was word of mouth.
Word of mouth. And it really surprised me, actually, that, and it wasn't until years after that when I was talking with the head of marketing and one of our franchises or licensees in Asia Pacific. And she was talking about who the facilitator for these certifications was going to be. And I was like, quit giving me such a hard time. She says, Bob, you don't get it. The way those facilitators, the way you show up in the facility, that's the brand.
Yeah.
It's the presence you bring into the room that's the brand. So we need to be very careful about that in terms of who will bring to, in this case, Australia to represent in the early days of the leadership circle. And that hit me like, wow, my presence is my brand.
Yeah.
And it actually, and then, the few colleagues that were close to me had very deep presence as well. And they were the brand of the company.
Yeah. Well, Dan Holden was the
Yes.
person that certified me at Children's Hospital in Denver, Colorado. And I remember first being a little bit scared of him when I walked in the room. 15 years later, he's one of my most cherished friends, but being a little scared. And it wasn't because he was scary. It was because I don't think I had ever been witnessed like that before. And all of my
Exactly.
all of my wholeness, the broken, the seemingly broken parts, all of that. And I remember, not only did it change how the trajectory of my business, it changed the trajectory of my life. And I almost think that feels like a requirement I know it's not a requirement, but it feels like a requirement to do this work is that we continue to do our work and get deeper. And so that we can support and be present for others as they do theirs. Cause it's not like we're transforming people. We are holding a frequency with a framework and then allowing them.
Yeah. But the
Yeah.
frequency is really, really important. The higher or deeper, the more we're present in a sort of undefended, radiant frequency of love, the more can happen.
Let's talk about that for a second. With executives, CEOs, executive
Yeah.
teams, large corporations, entrepreneurs, um, why is that frequency important for, I mean, all leaders, but so anyone might be skeptical of that too, of this frequency thing. Why is that important for a leader? How?
Well, we have this phrase, I learned it from Bill, leaders bring the weather. One of his clients said that at some point, leaders bring the weather.
Yeah.
And if you combine that with leadership, at least one layer of understanding leadership is the deployment of self into circumstances. So in any circumstance, you are your primary asset. How you show up, the weather you bring, has everything to do, and everybody's reading it. Everybody, the leader walks in the room, everybody knows what the forecast is pretty quickly.
Even if they have a smile on their face and they're not really
Oh,
feeling that way.
you can feel that. You can feel the energy, and And so how you deploy yourself in any given circumstance as a leader has everything to do with what can unfold in that meeting, in that space. And so leaders who are becoming more and more consciously effective are students of how do I deploy myself optimally in order to create the conditions for what wants to happen to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in our new post-VUCA, post-Banny reality, where the complexity is beyond anything we ever imagined we would be trying to lead through. Nobody knows. This is really, really the new territory. How do I lead effectively when I don't know?
Yeah.
When nobody in the room knows what the future is, how we need to restructure the business, what the strategy should be in order to meet this uncertainty. But even more so, the challenge, if we're really conscious the leader looks out at a world that's breaking apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming apart at the seams. Like the whole current order of society, civilization, economics, everything is sort of coming apart. And so the old way is reaching its limit. And we have to reinvent the future. We have to invent a whole different reality. And so how do we position our organizations to be part of a sustainable future, an equitable, sustainable future for all life on the planet in the midst of complexities which are unimaginable?
So how do we use the leadership circle to help us do that,
Well,
both individually and within our systems?
yeah, that's a huge developmental challenge. And the leadership circle is built on, it's built on a lot of work that's been done in the area of stages of adult development. I won't get into that in any great depth. The basic notion that adults, if we evolve and grow, we tend to grow through, not linearly, but we tend to grow through well-measured, well-documented stages of development. And with each stage of development, we can handle greater complexity with greater mastery and effectiveness. And so most adults are functioning in a level of leadership which is underpinned by a stage of development, which we call reactive. And here I'm more than I know. I'm being moved by the voices of people around me. I'm trying to live up to their expectations. Some of those people are well in my past, if not long dead, that have said, here's what it takes. Here's who you have to be in order to be effective. Here's what it looks like. So in my case, one of those messages was, I have to be a good boy. I have to be nice. I have to be agreeable. Don't say no. Don't confront. Don't challenge. I got those messages really, really early and pretty aggressively. So I took my best, which is a big heart, and I packed it into a strategy which said, I got to be liked and loved or I'm dead. I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, that became a real issue when I started to try to consult the senior leaders, and I got to confront, challenge, support. But like at every moment, my life was in their hands. Well, you're not very effective when you're having to live up to some standard like that. So I got very clear at some point, my worth, my core equation is that my identity, my sense of self was in other people's hands. And I managed it by always being agreeable and nice and acceptable. And that's not leadership. Now, somebody else, and I have some of this in me. It's like, it's all about results.
Me, perfectionism. Yeah, that was my home base.
Well, I got that in spades, too. Not only do I have to be perfect on the performance side, I have to be perfectly pleasing over here. So it's a kind of, and so, I mean, the gift of that from my father was that, man, did he work us hard and demanded perfection. And I learned so much that has served me so well, but it became an inner tyrant. And so, I became the kind of leader which was hard on people. The standards were high. I was critical. I was harsh. They could never do it quite right. I was always telling them how to do it the right way. And the business literally couldn't scale in the early years.
So that was the limitations, because you were in your reactive, and that was the
Right.
limitations but there were some gifts, right, that you alluded to that you also had.
Each of these is a gift. One is a gift of heart. I have the gift of, I'm also really, like Bill and I go back and forth about who is more arrogant.
I remember that at a conference a couple of years ago.
Yeah. We both scored each other on the 360 sort of off the charts. At one point, I called him aside. I was trying to talk him out of his feedback to me. And I said, Bill, you scored me 5 standard deviations above the mean on arrogance. And he goes, now that's gift of mind. And, but when you start to identify with your gift, which is reactive, when you say, this makes me me, I have to be this way or I'm nobody, I'm at nowhere else. Then I'm overplaying that gift of mine, which becomes arrogance. It becomes, let me tell you how it is. Let me tell you what I know. Let me show off. Not listening very well. I don't challenge my ideas because I got this nailed. And furthermore, it's very threatening to my identity when you challenge my ideas because they make me me.
Yeah.
It defines me. So all of this is normal human development where we identify with our strengths out of both harsh and really great experiences growing up in our early life. And they take us only so far.
Yeah.
And then we meet more and more complex roles and life circumstances. And we just run into a limit of what that structure of mind and level of leadership can actually offer. And so that's the bottom half of the profile. The top half are creative, what we call creative. And so for me, when I got in touch with, I gotta be a change agent. I gotta have everybody like me all the time. I want to lead and I gotta have everybody like me all the time. The next question was kind of like, well, what would I do if I weren't so worried about pleasing everybody? What do I care about that's bigger than that?
Who would I be?
What do I really want to be about? I'm not just the sum of everyone's voices. What's my purpose for being here?
Yeah.
What's the vision I'm holding? And that's the central kind of beating heart of this creative orientation. Bob Geekin calls it self-authoring. Now, authoring, I'm not authored by others. I'm self-authoring a future. I'm creating the life I came here to create.
Yeah. And
And that's
what
a
is
very
that?
different kind of leadership.
Yeah, very different kind of leadership. And it's not just a skill that we say, here's the 3 things you do to go from reactive to creative. So we could talk about both of the shift from reactive creative, and then how is creative different, and why do we want to shift our leadership in that direction? What, especially in this world that we find ourselves in.
Well, let me say first that that the creative leadership is minimum critical specs for operating in today's world. And I mean minimum.
Mm-hmm.
That the challenges I think we're facing now, at least, especially at senior levels, even more so, are beyond that.
Yeah. And I'd like
Um,
to talk about that too, because even though when we talk about the leadership circle, it's, we'll talk about creative a little bit. I always introduce
yeah,
integral and even
yeah.
unitive just so people uh, see the whole spectrum of what we think we know.
Well, if you look at how leadership is described in all the books, good to great, doesn't matter the book. Uh, the good ones, they're all describing a level of leadership that's beyond reactive.
Hmm.
You can, if you look at them, vision, what are we about? What do we care about? Building alignment, learning how to courageously take on difficult issues in a great way without killing people, in a way that really
Yeah.
builds trust and respect and trust, and being much more visionary, purposeful, acting with a sense of emotional intelligence, and being very relationally competent. When we did our book Scaling Leadership, it came out of some research we did. I was on my, I don't know, 5th or 6th keynote down in Australia. And it was like, I don't know what else to tell them. It's the same audience every year. So we did this study where we said, well, let's look at our written comments and we sorted for senior leaders. So you're getting senior leaders feedback from board and from other senior leaders.
Yeah.
And we looked at the written comments, and the questions are like, what are you doing that's working and what are you doing that's getting in your way? Those are the
Yeah.
2 we looked at. And we looked at really high creative, and we looked at really low, high reactive. And the descriptions of these two leaders could not be more different. Two groups of leaders could not have been more different. And
So,
what stood out for us, what blew us away in the say the top 10 list of the most commented upon themes of the most creative leaders, the most effective leaders, people. Like the six of the top 10 had to do with people. Then you had vision, authenticity, presence. I mean, it was stunning. The level of and so that's this creative level of leadership, which is required, I think, minimally to be effective. And we get this from a lot of our clients. They say, well, look, we want to do, like Roche Pharmaceutical. They've been after a lean transformation for many years. How do we get life-saving drugs to market that are safe and effective and get them to market faster? How do we bring them through the pipeline faster? So they've been looking at a restructure around agile transformation, and they're really clear with us that they know they cannot pull that off with reactive leadership. It just won't work.
so
So,
say a little bit more about like, what that requires of a leader, because it's deeper work. It's not let me go to a skill workshop and learn a little bit more about how to communicate better. It's deeper work to go from reactive, and to embrace creative. And could you say a little bit more about that and about that work, and then come back to Roche about, well, why do they know that to shift their system, they first need to shift, the leaders need to shift, people need to shift.
well, in large, a huge part of the transition is I have to see my reactivity. I have to see it. And
Yeah.
we have case studies in the books where leaders, didn't think they had to do that. And then the '08 depression hit or recession hit, and they could literally track the relationship between their business performance, and their 360 results. So all of a sudden, like, one of our clients we wrote up in the book just said, at the time when my organization needed me to be most creative, I went reactive.
Mm,
Other one right in the middle of that went, oh my God, he got actually much more reactive when he realized okay, he had to face his arrogance,
mm,
and he was brilliant. He was across everything, but he was killing people. And they literally couldn't work together as a leadership organization in the midst of that effectively because they were all functioning in a reactive structure. And they were sort of, each reactive structure was playing across from the other one, and they just spiraled down together rather than spiraled up together.
yeah.
And once they saw it and they could see it in their business results, they just went, okay, we have to go on this journey. So part of it is a kind of deep inquiry and learning and feedback and how am I showing up and so on. That's not easy. So
Right.
these leaders which affect kind of transformation like that, they learn out loud. They're radically human. They say, okay, I get it. I have to do most of the changing, and I can't delegate the development effort to HR. HR can be my support, but this is us.
Yeah.
What's going on in the senior team is the culture and level of performance of the whole organization. So how do we show up more effectively? They take that on, and so there's both a conversation about how we work together that might be reactive, but then you notch it up. How do we really want to work together? And what are we about? This is the visionary side of it. What are we about together? What's the organization we want to create together that would have us thrive in the midst of these uncertain times and excites the hell out of us?
So it's,
And that's
yeah.
the difference. It's authoring the future rather than being authored by all these forces which are pushing us around. Or I'm allowing myself to be pushed around because I'm reactive. And that stance is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so the primary focus of somebody moving from reactive to creative, I think of as how do I get clear about what I really care about or what we really care about together? One of our taglines is creating outcomes that matter most. So how do I as an individual or we as a team organization get really clear about what we're here to do together?
Yeah.
That's
And we need to
bigger
have
than it.
both in alignment, right? It's like I need to be getting clear within me in
Yes.
order to help this organization, this team, this system get clear. They are
And
separate things.
when they come into alignment, it's really powerful. When I can start to see that I can fulfill on what really matters to me through this organization.
Yeah.
And then our purposes align around a vision or a direction that we care about that's bigger than what divides us. So like one of the dimensions in the top half is courage and authenticity, the
Mhm.
ability to tell the truth to each other and do it really well.
Yeah.
So few leadership teams are good at this, being really good at it. And we tend to talk about the upside and not the downside. We tend to avoid difficult conversations. We tend to take time positioning the issue so nobody in the room is at fault. There's a lot of ways we just don't cut right to it. And so, but you only get to that when what matters is bigger than your fear.
Yeah. Bigger than your fear. What matters is bigger than your fear. Yeah.
Yeah. Then what unites us, what we want to create is bigger than our fear. Then we can move to it, or we can fight like cats and dogs, really. But we know that we're committed to the same thing. So in highly aligned organizations, you'll see a lot of conflict, but it's healthy conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's what creates new ideas and where we see what's not working.
Hmm.
So building senior leadership teams that can really support each other's development and really have the difficult conversations that end up with really good strategy and direction is. I once did an exercise with a senior group, and it was describe the organization that if it existed would put you out of business.
Hmm.
Describe the organization that if it existed would put you out of business. And they went at it and they described it. Now, how closely do you line up with that? That got them quiet.
Yeah.
Then we talk about the strategy required that they needed to build, and they kind of played around. Then I said, now, what's the quality of your current level of conversation and teamwork that's required to fulfill on that strategy? And they got quiet again. And then I asked them, what's harder, the strategy conversation or the teamwork conversation? And
And
the teamwork conversation.
yeah.
If we could do the teamwork, if we could really tell it, we can do the strategy. We have the competence.
Right. I have just this week, two of my clients, it was so interesting. But one's, I think, 6 months into the work and one's about 3 months into the work. And both have taken the leadership circle and are really engaged in the work and are both kind of at these points where this feels really hard. And I was like, it can be hard. And and there was also this point of, but are you are you ready to go back to the way things were? And like, no, like they want to, but it's this unknowing, it's this looking deeper. It's sometimes being the only one because right now there's some of the only executives in these two different organizations doing this work.
Yeah.
And then getting them lined up with, well, where are your values at play? And are your value, how are you meeting them right now, today? Oh, they're minuses. Well, we need to get your personal value in alignment somehow. And then say, and then how can you bring this to work? How do you bring it back in? And
Yeah.
it's so interesting um, to watch people wake up to it, right? When they first learn it, this model is amazing. And then also be like, wow, it is actually really hard looking at myself and bringing my full self into the system
Right.
and really
The
rewarding.
fact is I can go somewhere else where it's safe to be great.
Yeah.
There isn't one. And so this is the challenge,
Yeah.
especially in the middle. Especially in the middle or middle senior levels of an organization, how do I build in my sphere of influence an organization that I believe in, that we
Yeah.
believe in together? That's not a renegade, but it's aligned with what the mission of the organization. How can we be a model?
Yeah.
And
How can I be fully me and fully committed to this organization? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, we talk about and the leadership circle is largely based, not fully, but on the reactive to creative shift, because it's
Right.
such an important shift to make. And you have alluded to, and I've been in sessions with you, that there is something even more that's being asked and required of us in this world of unknowns.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond the creative capacity. And could we talk a little bit about that? What would it be if people were looking at the leadership circle, maybe the high end of creative and then off the circle would be integral. Could we talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing and what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I'm 2 years in piloting. Before that, you were part of, I think, pilot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're about a year and a half into what I'm calling the Unity Academy, which is uh, unity informed integral leadership. I think that's the future. It's integral leadership, but I think in order to really have it flourish, especially now in our times, it needs to be informed by um, the larger field of intelligence, which we're calling unity. And so there are a number of shifts that happen here for individuals and leaders. One is I go from being self-authored to being authored, not by others, not by, my fears and doubts, but authored by something larger than me, by a future that seems for some reason to want to come through me or through our organization,
Hmm.
an emergent future. And I don't really know what it is. It's beckoning. And so I'm learning, I'm taking this well-refined self-authoring capability to create vision and leadership and create a future and putting it in service of what wants to come through that. And
Yeah.
that's a big shift in my relationship with purpose and vision. I'm not authoring it anymore. It's
Being authored through me.
through me. And then the reactive work goes even deeper. So as I start to open to higher inspiration and frankly, higher currents of energy that want to come through me, um, light casts shadows. So I start to see the opposite of my authentic self, which I've worked so hard on in the creative level, this authentic, courageous, visionary person. I am that. And I'm also its opposite.
Hmm.
I'm also, I just as soon love you as kill you. I can feel that. Like when I get angry, I start to really notice that there's a part of me which would do you harm. This is where, we've met the enemy and they are us.
Yeah.
And it's rare for somebody to really own that what I see in you, and I'm critical of you, or, I'm projecting on you, this is in me too. And it's vital that we start to see that, especially as we lead in difficult and conflictual situations. You see the lack of capacity to do that all over the world right now. We're making enemies, not noticing that they're in us.
Yeah.
And so this capacity to face more and more of how the darkness or difficulties or dysfunction that's in the world is also in me.
Mm-hmm.
Gorbachev, I think, was well into this when he met with Reagan at Reykjavik. I know people that were behind the scenes with both. And he was starting to see this dance of enemies. He was starting to see the systemic nature of it. You call me these names, I call you. You build these bombs, I build bigger bombs, so you build even bigger bombs. So how are we that different?
Yeah.
I am the enemy that you accuse me of. So he walks into Reykjavik and he says to Reagan, I'm here to deprive you of an enemy. I disarm. Deal. That's integral leadership. It sees it's systemic. It sees the whole system. It sees my contribution to the system. Doesn't project out onto you, make you wrong. It doesn't assume that my position is right. It presumes my position is partial.
Yeah.
That the reason we're embedded in a conflict is because my position isn't right. I need the corrective of my enemy or my opponent. And so it's a very, and that naturally moves toward dialogue, where I'm not there to champion my position. I'm there to really learn. And when dialogue gets really deep, we're letting a larger intelligence inform us. This is dialogos, meaning moving through. So what leaders are learning to do, and this is a practice that we're using, they're learning to sit in the unknown together. Like we have the conversation, we dump everything we know. We know this, we want this, here's what we need to do, all this stuff. And then at some point you kind of realize none of that adds up to what we actually need to do in order to create the future.
Yeah.
And you're left with not knowing. And if you can sit with that, the unknown is pregnant. It's pregnant with possibility. And so what we do is help them just deeply, deeply listen and speak what's emerging together. And all of a sudden, some new ideas and breakthroughs hit there are a number of elements here, but one is an expanded understanding of and access to intuition as a skill, as a requirement. Like Peter Senge said years ago when he wrote The Fifth Discipline, how do you find leverage, that one place where if you make a move here, it really shifts it, transforms a system in unexpected ways? How do you find that in the complexity that's unfigureoutable? Through intuition.
Not through the full logical, rational, not that we're not using it. But
it's unfigureoutable.
Yeah.
Einstein said, the intellect has little to do on the road to discovery.
Yeah.
The real discoveries they come to us. I've talked to so many people. One guy who's credited with solving major issue in stroke epidemiology in the world, understanding how strokes develop and when you need to intervene and so on. It all came in the shower. Boom.
Just like that.
Just like that. And it took him 20 years of worldwide research to unpack what he saw in one moment and research it, and it all proved out. So this is really practical stuff. But when you say intuition, people go, woo-woo.
They think woo. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
If you listen to the podcast I did or the interview I did with Federico Fujin, who invented the microchip, he's saying the same thing. It all came in a moment.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he wasn't working rationally hard. He was. But that isn't what led him there. All of a sudden, it all came in, and it took him quite a while to unpack it, but it was all there. So this relationship with a larger field of intelligence that seems to want to come through, that as we learn to open to it together, it can inform us in very specific ways: vision, strategy, innovations, new technologies. But this is an area where we have not known to look, or haven't, at least in Western world. It's voodoo, and it's not. And so, what I'm excited about here, in one way, because I love integrating, is that we are at a time where we're starting to see that these kinds of things like intuition, and we lie in the lap of immense intelligence. This
multiple intelligences.
Well, is actually the way the quantum world works.
Yeah.
And so this is the new level of leadership: the ability to be authored, the ability to face my deeper shadows, the ability to be informed by then what's trying to come through, both individually and then collectively in dialogue, then translate that into inventing the new.
Right.
Right. And new technologies, new, but also new systems, creating new organizational systems and systems of governance and so on that actually deliver in the midst of this kind of complexity.
Yeah.
So it's a significant upgrade, and but it requires that I've built this self-authoring capacity.
Right.
And then I take it and open it up into the next level of effectiveness.
Which is why this work is more important than ever, to get, more leaders operating at creative and beyond. And to, a couple of things, when you were talking, it made me think of, I was out to coffee with a leader I respect. It's not someone that I work with as an executive coaching. And she was telling me about a whole new way she had redone her business. And I asked her, how and why did you make that switch? And it's been very successfully financially. And I was listening to her. I was like, it sounds like that was an intuitive download. And I don't think she'd ever really had anybody actually say that to her, and as used to having to say the strategy and the tactics. And she just stopped for a moment, and she's like, actually, yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would love to see you say that to more. She speaks a lot. I would love to see you say that in more of your speaking engagements.
Yeah.
It would just be amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the source or the genesis of the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
I look back on where the leadership circle came from. It was a download. Like, I've been getting them for a long time.
Yeah.
Chapters of books would just drop in when I would struggle for days with, I don't quite know how to weave this chapter. There's a lot of threads that got to get woven in the right order, and how to really pull this together. I'd be sitting in meditation in the morning, and boom. After about 3 days of struggle, the whole chapter would just drop in. I could hardly write it down fast then.
Yeah. After days and days and months of not nothing, but seemingly nothing. And then there it is. Yeah.
a lot of the great inventors, like, Einstein and Poincaré and Federico, that I just mentioned. I mean, this is how they describe how it works.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the thing that I'm excited about is, you said, when we started with words like frequency or woo-woo, like frequency, but actually reality is a frequency field.
Yep.
This is quantum physics. It's not woo-woo. It's a frequency. And so what we're learning is that the future that we want is at a different frequency and of a different frequency than the current reality that we're living it out.
Yeah.
And so we try to fix our way forward, which is at the frequency of our current reality. So how do you literally shift timelines?
Yeah. Well, as we come to the conclusion here, it's fun to come back to, this is where it started, was actually the downloads that you had. And
Okay.
I was actually at a party this weekend, and it was a woo party, and a lot of people are like, we don't even know what that means. And there was oracle cards there, but one of my friends, who's a chief executive at a law firm, came up to me. She's like, I don't get these cards and stuff. And I was like, I was like, it's about metaphor. It's about archetype. And I found myself much more in archetype and bringing it to clients much more, because it's not about the woo, it's about the pattern, the archetype, the metaphor. And to me, some of that is what helps us shift our frequency, is to
Yeah.
utilize the metaphor. And so
Yeah.
thank you, Bob, for your courageous authenticity and bringing this into the world, because, wow, a lot of people think this is a scary time to be alive. That there's another way to look at it, that if we can tap into that next frequency and do this work, what an amazing time to be alive.
Well, we're here for it, or we wouldn't be here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank
So
you.
again, happy 70th year. Thank you so much for being a guest for season 2, as we take people through, some of the steps and ways to move into creative and integral leadership.
Thank you.
And thank you for being my lifelong teacher. For more information, visit insight-cc.com or email us at info@insight-cc.com. We look forward to hearing from you.